Please welcome your panelists for the Power of Mindfulness, moderated by award-winning host, storyteller, and filmmaker Jay Shetty.
Hello, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to today's panel session. I'm really blessed and honored to be with every single one of you today and have this incredible panel up here. My name's Jay Shetty. I'm a storyteller, spoken word artist, and former monk. And I'm joined today by Baron Baptiste, the founder of the Baron Institute, the Baptiste Institute, and the foundation, and yoga instructor, joined by Goldie Hawn, who's the founder of the Hawn Foundation, and actress, joined by Andy Puddicombe, who's the co-founder of Headspace, the app with 27 million downloads. And I'm joined by Tim Ryan, US representative for Ohio. Now, before we dive into this fascinating conversation that we're about to have, I'd love to get a show of hands of how many of you have ever practiced mindfulness. Excellent. How many of you have never practiced mindfulness? How many of you fallen asleep while trying to practice mindfulness? And how many of you don't put up your hand no matter what I say? Thank you for the honesty. I like it. We're in a non-judgmental environment. So instead of sitting here and trying to just define mindfulness, we want to start off by actually giving you an experience of it. And we have Andy here, who's an expert, who's actually going to start us off by getting our energies in the right place, focusing us before we start this beautiful discussion. So over to you, Andy.
Thanks, Jay. Morning, everybody. So yeah, regardless of whether you've done any of this before or not, I'm going to lead you through it. It's a super simple little exercise, very, very quick, just a couple of minutes. First thing I'd like you to do, I'm assuming that your phones are already switched off, but if you can just make sure they're not going to ring in the next couple of moments. And if you could just get yourself comfortable, you don't need to sit in any special way. I'd suggest you have your arms and your legs uncrossed. You're probably going to find that more comfortable, but whatever works for you. And I'd like you just for a moment, just to look ahead of yourself. You're not really staring at anything in particular. You're just kind of taking in the entire space in the room. So it's a very sort of soft focus. And as you maintain that soft focus, just taking a couple of big deep breaths, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And with the next out breath, if you haven't done already, just gently closing the eyes. And as you close the eyes, I'd just like you to take a moment just to appreciate that feeling of having stopped, having paused, having nothing to do for the next couple of minutes. Don't worry if there are lots of thoughts going through the mind. That's perfectly normal, just allowing the thoughts to come and go. And just taking a moment to bring the mind into the body, just feeling the weight of the body pressing against the chair, the feet on the floor, and the hands and the arms just resting on the legs. Again, nothing to do, just allowing thoughts to come and go at this stage. Notice how the body feels this morning, just checking in, noticing whether there's a sense of stillness or restlessness in the body. Of heaviness or lightness. And just taking a moment or two to notice the different sounds around you as well. So just getting comfortable in the space. And as you sit there, just beginning to notice how the body's breathing. So not breathing in any special way. Just feeling that rising and falling sensation in the body. And just for a minute, we're just going to stay with that sensation. If you find the mind wanders off at any stage, just noticing that, and then gently coming back to the breath again. Remember, nothing to do, allowing thoughts to come and go. Just coming back to the breath each time. And then just gently bringing the attention back to the body once more. Coming back to that feeling of weight and contact against a chair, the ground beneath you. And when you're ready, just gently opening the eyes again. Did we lose anyone? It was short, right? Not long enough to fall asleep, I don't think, this morning. No, we're good. We're good.
How did that feel? Good? Seeing little nods and claps. Well, thank you so much for that, Andy, for centering us, bringing us all into this present space. And we've actually got thousands and thousands of hours worth of meditation and mindfulness sitting here on this stage. We have background of politics, sports, media, entertainment. And so we're really going to be sharing that wealth of insight and information with you today. But I want to start off by asking our panelists about their first time ever. I mean mindfulness. And I want them to share their first time ever of practicing and being introduced to mindfulness. Not the first time it worked, but the first time ever. So Baron, we'll start with you.
First time practicing mindfulness.
Yes, yeah, of course.
Yeah, so, well, my parents were yoga and meditation teachers, and they opened the first yoga center in San Francisco around 1952, when you say yoga and people thought yogurt or what flavor kind of thing. And I have vivid memories of being very young, 5, 6, 7 years old, and being in my father's meditation class, and just sitting there kind of wide awake, wondering, why are people around me meditating to be awake? Because kids, what I realized is, wow, as a kid, I was already awake and engaging with life and fully participating, relating to everything around me, and everything was possible. It was like a childlike experience of mindfulness. Yeah, I was like awake.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Goldie.
I was picked out of a chorus line and suddenly overnight became somebody. And I didn't cotton to that too well. So I went to, and when I say that, I actually became panicked. I was really afraid to go in public. I mean, I really had a real issue with dealing with whatever was going to happen to me, because I did not have the dream of being a movie star. I had a dream of going home, opening a dancing school, getting married, and be happy. That's to me what I wanted. But I went to a psychologist for a couple years and then decided that I was going to be initiated into TM. And I will never forget my first moment of meditating, because it was a profound moment. I was given my mantra. I went into my room in Westwood here. It was a beautiful room with a rose and incense, and the air was coming through the window, and it was a lovely summer day. And I sat down, and I repeated my mantra to myself, and something extraordinary happened. my heart opened up. And I can't express the joy that I felt coming back to myself, to my true self, to where my heart was. I could actually feel and hear my own heartbeat. And the quietness actually ignited what is always in me, and I think in all of us, really. But when the clutter goes away, it was a reintroduction to me. And I felt like giggling, and that's kind of what happened to me. It's like there was so much joy in there that I started giggling in this room. So it was a profound experience.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. We can almost feel like we were in that room with you. Yeah, thank you. And before we go on to Andy, I just shared a confession. It's the first time I met Andy, but I shared a confession with him backstage that when I first heard about Headspace, I found out about it, I think, very early on, probably in the first year when you started, and I really wanted to invest in it. But the irony was that I was a monk at the time, so I didn't have any money to invest in. So I'm going to try now. But Andy, your first mindfulness experience.
Yeah, so it was a long time before Headspace and a long time before I was a monk as well. So I was like Baron. I was a kid. Mum was going through a tough breakup and was looking for a way to kind of work with that. And she signed up for a meditation class, and I basically didn't want to be left at home on my own that evening. I was about 10 years old or something. So I said, I'll come with you. And I went, and I was, you might imagine me saying this, maybe my mum's kind of like a bit of a hippie, or it was that kind of household. She was a little bit, but it wasn't that kind of household. And I was the least unlikely person to go and try meditation. And I have to say, even at that age, I was really struck by it had a really significant impact, even that very kind of first time, even at that age. And what strikes me now is the more work we do with kids. We were chatting just before kind of coming on stage. Someone was saying they sit and they do it with their 3-year-old. And I just, I would encourage all of us to kind of think about this, not in terms of it's something we do when we get to a particular age, but something that is universal at any age.
Absolutely. Thank you, Andy. And Tim, your first time.
Yeah, I think moments playing sports growing up, those probably were my first mindfulness moments. But the one I really remember was my first yoga class that I took in college. I'd played sports and then stopped. And I had a ballroom dancing course that, you have to take a course like that. And in the ballroom dancing course, there was this flyer for a yoga class. I said, well, that looks interesting. Because I knew, like, Phil Jackson was doing this stuff with a sports kid. And so I did this yoga class, and, all the years of, like, lifting weights and just stretching a little bit before practice, maybe a little bit after. But it wasn't a big, like, 1990. You weren't, like, as comprehensive. So I did this yoga class for an hour, and at the end you do your savasana, your corpse pose at the end, and I was just wide open and just, almost felt like I wasn't on the ground, and I was just in the moment, and it was like, whoa, there's something here. And that was the beginning.
Awesome. So we've touched on it already a bit about helping children and bringing children into mindfulness. I want to get a show of hands of how many of you have children that practice mindfulness, whether it's at school or sessions or fantastic. How many of you wish you had children that practice mindfulness? And how many of your children wish that their parents practice mindfulness? But it's incredible to see how much mindfulness has now started making its way through so many different areas of society. And I want to speak a bit about children with Goldie here, because Goldie, you've been working with children for a very long time. That's been your focus area of sharing mindfulness. Tell us a bit about some of the results and some of the stories that you've seen of their transformation.
Well, back in the day, it was 15 years ago, we looked at that, and I thought, well, we've got to, look at mindfulness and help children gain some sort of sense of control over their own emotional construct, because of the symptoms in the classroom, as you know, were pretty profound. depression and suicide and things that are just unthinkable things, for children not to have a joyful heart, a way of expressing their childhood in a way that they deserve. And it touched me, and I created a program around that 15 years ago, and it's called Mind Up. But the program is really, it touches for sure on mindfulness, and we do this in the classroom 3 times a day, because oftentimes you want entry into the school. So it was like, how do we get entry into the school when you're doing meditation? And at that time, mindfulness was not a household word, and trying to figure out a way that we could actually open doors with science. And because there was so much science that was already proven with Richie Davidson and some people that we know who have cover of Time magazine, that you realize that meditation actually changes the brain. It strengthens the brain and the cortex. All of these things that you look at, brain fitness. So what created all about the brain. So our children learn about their brain. They have brain in the classroom. They know where their amygdala is. They know where their prefrontal cortex is. They know where their hippocampus is. They know how to regulate themselves when they're feeling sad or angry or uncertain. And these are the areas that mitigate learning. So it's a 4-pronged program. One is learn about your brain. The other one is mindfulness and brain and correlates. So when a child is feeling angry or upset or overly stimulated, they know what's going on with the amygdala, and they know through breathing and focusing, they can understand and have context, say, to what's really going on. And it becomes science, really. So it plays well into the curriculum. And then we do mindfulness, so we're mindful of our senses, and that gives them a sense also of focusing, because also our children aren't focusing well. So we want to prolong that. And our research has showed, of course, that we've done rigorous research on it, and these kids are focusing so much better now. And then we have positive psychology. And all of that just, we do the dopamine dance, when we're having a great time, or we're dancing ourselves, or we're giving someone a gift, or, ways and means to change sort of the ethos of the classroom, and also the interior of the child, building empathy, which is another thing we're losing. So with our children. So I think, we're working on it. No matter what, we just put one step in front of the other and say, this is going to change, because each child will actually come out changing and change someone else. They'll actually change, I think, 25 people, they say. So it's a ripple effect. And one of the children said, 7, got into trouble on the playground. And he goes into the classroom, the teacher said, now, Juan, why did you do that? He said, because my amygdala was overactive and my prefrontal cortex wasn't thinking. It was like brilliant. And then another child, I said, well, how do you use this? And he was in 5th grade. And it was a tough class. He said, well, I use it because, an example, he said, I was on the playground and my best friend pushed me and made me really angry. He said, but I decided to take a mind breath, and then I realized that if I pushed him back, he wouldn't be my best friend anymore. And of course, I use that because I look at our Congress and under the Capitol and all the people that are running our country and making decisions and representing us. And I think, can't they get along and just take a breath and really practice that kind of critical thinking, right? So, and that was about, 5th grade. So he was about, 11. One child, this was really beautiful because building empathy is important. And what's happening in the classroom when we do create this kind of community, mindful community, little boy was crying. The teacher walked in. She said, what's happening? He said, we're sitting in our mindful circle because, I don't know his name, one little boy said, my dad left for Iraq and we won't see him, and I'm not going to see him for a long time. And another little boy chimed in and said, he said, well, my dad had brain cancer, and we couldn't see him for a while, but he got better, and then I was able to see him. And another child said, well, my dad and my mom broke up, and my dad left, and I thought I would never see him again. He said, but I do. I get to see him every other weekend. Well, these are children helping each other deal with an issue. And this, to me, meant the world, because one of the things that makes the world go round for a healthy world is an empathetic heart and an empathetic mind. So these are a few stories.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Can we get a demonstration of the dopamine dance later on, maybe? I'd love.
Don't get me started.
Well, thank you, Goldie. And Baron, we know, a few years ago, every single article you saw was 30 celebrities who now practice mindfulness, 10 athletes that now do mindfulness, and it started to become this popular talking point of successful, high-performance people who were practicing and utilizing mindfulness in their various endeavors and ventures. And Baron, you've been working very closely with athletes. Maybe you could tell us some of those stories.
Yeah, so, well, for me it started actually with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar back in the 80s. You were maybe around. We used to do yoga practice here. And Kareem used to come to class, practice every day. And he'd start bringing the younger athletes, newer players. And the younger guys didn't necessarily know what it was, but they were getting something out of it. And they respected, the veteran player, Kareem. And I say that because 1994, I was hired by the Philadelphia Eagles to be on the coaching staff. And the owner of the Eagles, Jeffrey Lurie, at the time said, well, Baron, do you want to call yourself yoga teacher or what? And I said, no, that wouldn't go over well with the athletes, the trainers, just in that culture and at that time. And I said, how about peak for performance specialists? And he said, perfect. So what that gave me is I went in and I taught mindfulness, meditation. I taught yoga practice in disguised as peak performance techniques.
Exactly.
Yeah. And at first, the athletes were really, enjoying the physical benefits of creating more pliability in their body, less injuries. At the time, the Eagles were plagued with injuries, so that was part of the focus. But what started to happen is the athletes very organically, without me imposing it on them, started getting the mindfulness, the awareness, the relaxation. I remember on game day, after about 2 years in with the Eagles, they would not go out to the field without me taking them through like a quieting, calming, breathing practice, meditation practice, some yoga, but as a way of just relaxing and finding their center, getting related to, the reality around them instead of being related to the stress within them, so to speak. So it was, over time, the athletes they saw for themselves the benefit of, mindfulness, and also how it has the power when we get related to, the moment here and the breath and the body, how stress can just disappear. Like we can alter our reality in a moment, a real moment.
It is interesting, though, when you realize that there is a huge correlate to our brain and our activity in the brain. And that's what's exciting, because it doesn't happen over nothing. When you quiet the mind and you give this idea, this practice, it changes so many things neurologically. Balancing out the left and right hemispheres and ways that you can, in a way, kind of break down for better brain health. And, and it's just so important in terms of that, but also in our government. I mean, we've got to figure out a way to get everyone meditating.
We're getting there, Goldie. We're getting there.
That's what I mean. I mean, it's just crazy. Crazy.
One thing I'll say, because Tom Brady was here about 10 years ago. I got on, I think it was United Airlines flight, and I pulled out the magazine, and Tom Brady was on the cover. And I started reading it, and they said, well, what do you do as a hobby? And he said, I go to the Baptiste yoga studios in Boston. Oh. He said, they're great for your body, but it's great for your attitude. And I didn't know, that I just randomly saw that. But there was something about it's great for your attitude. That's the mindfulness piece where it can alter one's attitude in a moment. Yeah. Whether in yoga or just the sitting practice. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Andy, you've been working very closely with the NBA. and other high performance people. So tell us a few of those stories.
Yeah, we started working with, and it was total accident to begin with. So before the app, most people think Headspace has been around for like maybe a couple of years. We started 10 years ago, and we didn't have an app, and we did events in London for about 2 years, 3 years maybe. And we kept noticing these same people come along, and they would come along like every week. And eventually we went up and asked them why they kept coming back. I mean, it was nice that they did, but we were surprised. And it was the sports psychologist for the British Olympic team. And so we started working with them, and they were bringing their athletes along. And they had some really good performances at 2012. I'm not suggesting that we were responsible for it, but yeah. And they said, you know, would you be interested in actually putting together a program that we could work towards for Rio? So we spent 2 years working with the sports psychologists and putting together a sport-specific kind of program. And yeah, thankfully that's now morphed into a partnership with Adam Silver and the NBA, but also with Nike. And looking at, I think that the nice thing about it is not just another kind of entryway for people to learn about mindfulness, but it also takes it out of, I think meditation and mindfulness are often used kind of interchangeably and therefore kind of misunderstood. And my way, at least the way it was taught to me in the monastery, was that mindfulness is our ability to be present at any moment in the day. We don't have to be sitting there like a statue meditating. But it's useful to have an exercise like meditation because it's much easier to learn kind of mindfulness within that kind of context. So by people now going out and doing guided kind of runs and things like that, that's a real game changer for people because not everybody is comfortable starting off with that idea of meditation. You know, so learning how to apply mindfulness even when they're going about their usual everyday activities has been, for us, a huge leap forward.
Absolutely. And Tim, mindfulness and politics sounds like a good combination. And are there more politicians that are meditating mindfulness? Can you tell us who, maybe? Any examples? But tell us some stories.
I'm not going to out anybody here on stage today. But there are more and more people doing it, more members of Congress doing it. As the science comes online, you hear a lot about, you know, they'll come up to me, and say, you know, my daughter teaches yoga or my wife does yoga, and they tell me I need to do it. I need to meditate. So it, like society as a whole, I think it's starting to penetrate more and more. And last 7-8 years, I've been pushing initiatives to try to raise awareness. So we would bring meditation teachers to Capitol Hill to actually do sessions with members of Congress or mostly staff. You know, so Sharon Salzberg has been there. Andrew Weil came and taught his breathing, the 4-7-8 breathing technique that he has. We have people who do a lot of work with veterans with post-traumatic stress. We were able to have a veteran testify before the Veterans Committee last year who does Transcendental Meditation. We've had several sessions in Washington, D.C. with The Art of Living has a program called a Power Breath Workshop for veterans, which is a lot of really deep breathing. So like you were saying about people not being able to necessarily sit and just say, I'm going to sit and meditate. Yeah. Times 100 when you're talking about a combat veteran. Yeah. So the breathing techniques and the more physical stuff are a better entry point and have had tremendous benefits for them. And we've seen vets who have come in, they're on 15 or 20 different meds. They go through this programs like it, and you know, within a month or two, they're down to 2 or 3 meds. So to talk about this and these techniques as real interventions for what's going wrong. And people say we got to fix the government. Well, we are the government. You know, we've got to start treating each other differently with respect, more civility. And I think it starts by what Goldie was saying in the classroom. You know, so my vision of this whole deal is like you're teaching these kids how to deal with their own issues, their own emotions, the fear, the anger, the stress that they have to deal with every single day. You're training their teacher to embody and model. 75% of what a kid learns is through modeling. So they're modeling that behavior. If you have veterans there's a new phrase that I'm starting to use now that they use at a Boulder Crest facility up in Virginia where they take veterans in. They call it post-traumatic growth. Like a more positive approach to say, how do you take all of this trauma and how do you grow from it? And they have techniques like Transcendental Meditation and other ones to help them grow through it. But you can see, we have nurses that are burned out, social workers that are burnt out. We have cops, first responders that are dealing with enormous amounts of stress over 25-year career. So there are interventions where we're actually trying to train police officers and train people who are going into battle with these techniques. So you can see how slowly, and not so long of a time, the culture starts to shift, because we're focused on training people in all of these different areas. And to me, then you will see people saying, I'm going to elect a member of Congress who is civil, because I'm tired of the screaming and yelling. I'm gonna go to the town hall meeting, and I'm gonna be the one who asks a polite question. And this, let me just end with this. This does not mean we're all gonna hold hands and agree on every issue and sing Kumbaya together, because it's America. It's messy, it's sloppy. You know, I use the joke all the time. It's like, I'm Irish, and there's this old Irish saying, is this a private fight or can anyone get into it? And it's like, that's democracy. Like, we're gonna have this conflict, but you do it with sportsmanship, you do it with civility, and you hopefully move the needle on that stuff. So it doesn't mean we're gonna agree on everything, but it does mean we can put civility and a process in place that helps cultivate the ideas we need to move forward. And that starts with coming together, and coming together starts with, you know, your own shit. If I can be the first one to swear on the panel today.
Thank you for that fantastic answer, Tim. Genuinely, it was brilliantly addressed. And when it comes to dealing with our own, as you said, I think it's
not really a bad word anymore. Have you been watching what's going on around? Doesn't even count.
I haven't sworn since I was 16 years old, so
I'm from Youngstown, Ohio, so like it comes with the package.
I'll back you up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, when you're dealing with your own stuff, you reminded me of a phenomenal thought and quote by Charles Horton Cooley. He said this in the 1800s. He said that today, I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. Right? Just let it blow your mind for a moment. He said, today, I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. Meaning that we get lost in this perception of ourselves, and then act from a completely different position rather than our best, empathetic, kind, compassionate self. And so everyone who's sharing their wisdom and insights with us today is allowing us to get back there. And one of the things that I really wanted to touch on is with our panel today, because they've been practicing. How many years have you been practicing mindfulness yoga for? Just say the number.
40.
40, Goldie?
It's 1972, you do the math.
Okay.
Can't.
Yeah, so I was like 35 years ago when I first started.
Right.
Yeah.
6, 7.
Okay, someone add that up, 18. Someone add those up ASAP. The point being that imagine you lived in a world where you didn't practice mindfulness. Like, imagine you lived in a world where you never had that moment, we never got there, you're not on this panel. What major life decision, personal or professional, would have been completely different and led you down a road you don't want to think about? We'll start with this one with Baron.
I don't know where I can't know where I'd be without a crystal ball kind of thing, without it. But I know this, is that I'm a different human being when I'm practicing meditation. When I sit and meditate, I'm a different human being. I have a different capacity to deal with stress and things that are happening, things that are coming at me. It allows me to be not reactive, and if I am reactive, to snap out of that pretty quickly. Like to Goldie's point earlier that it's fitness, mindfulness is fitness for the brain. I also have the experience of it's fitness for my inner witness or higher witness, of like self-awareness. So I can get trapped up in thoughts that, negative thoughts or disempowering thoughts, or thoughts that create separation from others. And I have the ability to see, well, I'm not my thoughts. I have thoughts, and I have feelings different than I am these negative feelings. Kind of like I can't repeat your quote, but that was pretty profound. Like there was and the meditation is the ability to disrupt, like a disruption of a pattern, a drift into a direction I actually don't want to be going, a direction I'm not committed to. And the practice of meditation, like developing a muscle, having developed that muscle through practice, when I'm in an area in myself that I don't want to be, I can find the light switch, so to speak. I can clear something for myself or get something out of the way and alter reality, alter what's possible in a moment, kind of thing.
Yeah. Goldie.
Well, what would I have done differently? And
what decision would have been skewed?
What decision? Well, life is all about decisions, right? It's the most important thing. You are the sum total of your decisions you make, right? But when I was a dancer, and then became, an actress, it was difficult for me. And I think that without my meditation, without my becoming more mindful, becoming more self-aware and aware of others, I was able, I think that I would have made some probably bad decisions because of a level of insecurity. In terms of either whether it was male-female relationships, whether it's how you respond really to other people who have an opinion of you when you're a public person. There's a lot of people who just don't like you just because you're on the planet, even when you didn't do anything. When I would have been terribly hurt when I read a review that said Goldie's performance was as flat as her chest. Sounds like something someone else might say today, but that was back then. In the meantime, I would have been sad. I would have been hurting. I would have taken it to heart. But because I didn't, mindfulness allowed me to witness without embodying the emotional construct. So if someone says, I love you, it has no difference than someone saying, I hate you, because it's their emotion. So like you said, there's a separation now, an ability to witness and not partake. So I think that's really probably the thing that I would have not been as happy being in the public eye.
Absolutely, and all of us have to deal with failure, rejection in all sorts, whether it's in the public eye or in business. So definitely a really valuable skill. Let's head over to Andy.
Yeah, I think probably, it seems like an obvious one, but probably deciding to go away and become a monk. I know they're all kind of tied up together, but I was studying sports science at university, so forgetting the earlier meditation kind of stuff. And I was kind of obsessed with physical health. I was competing as a gymnast, I was studying, I was working as a personal trainer. I was really kind of keyed into that. And I really thought that was everything. And then I kind of got to a point where I was kind of achieving the things I wanted to achieve, but realized that actually I wasn't terribly happy. And that really kind of got me thinking, that I think our focus generally in society is very much on how we look and how we perform, and yet not necessarily how we're kind of feeling inside. So I went into university one afternoon, and I told my lecturer that I was going to leave and I was going to become a Buddhist monk instead. And at which point he said, I think you should go and see the doctor. This is true. He said they'll give you some Prozac or something and you'll be fine. And I'm like, I'm not depressed. I just realized I'm not as happy as I think I could be. And fortunately at the time I had a very supportive girlfriend who was willing for me to kind of take off to the Himalayas. And so I left university and it really kind of altered. It was a 10-year journey and it altered the course of my life.
Yeah. Thank you. Tim.
Yeah, hard to tell. Probably some burnout congressman going through the motions. Maybe a couple more wives. I mean,
really?
Honestly,
and
you think about if you do this practice, which I think a lot of those of us who do. I mean, it is so beneficial for your relationships that you have that you reflect. You are okay with acknowledging you're wrong, or you said something you shouldn't have said, or you were mean, or and that is reality, and that's opening up to your spouse, your partner, and what leads to bad relationships is the level of self-absorption, that inability to kind of step out of and away from your ego part of you that's engaged in that relationship. And I mean, that's the honest. And I know through my work that I would probably not be pushing initiatives like that aren't like mainstream. Like, I'm on this panel because I'm a United States congressman for 16 years who is pushing meditation into the world. Like, I would never have had the courage to do that without the meditation. It's like, well, look, this is who I am. Doesn't mean I don't have positions or advocate on all of these other issues, but I think you generate a level of courage, some bravery, I guess, to just follow your own path along the way.
It's kind of creating a real, true, authentic self. It's like, who am I? And I think that's such a great question to ask yourself. And when you really have an answer and you've lived a life that you can say, yeah, this is who I am, and you're for the most part proud of it, then you can walk the path of truth, right? Without, apologizing, And I think this is one of the things that as you get older, and I'm the oldest person on the panel, I can honestly say that authenticity is everything. But if we don't go inside, I don't believe we ever really get to know ourselves. And to know yourself is to be joyful. It's a beautiful thing. And so as we grow older, it is a fantastic life because you can literally say, I am. And that matters with everything you do. And I love what you talk about bravery.
And I think that when you're talking about policies and approaches, and you look at it from this perspective, that you start to see how our systems that we have in place are not cultivating that kind of genius that every human being has. And I think that's one of the real problems we have in education today, is that God has created every little kid differently, unique, but yet our whole system is built on standards, and instead of excellence, it's about how do we standardize these kids,
right.
And so I was reading this book the other day, and they mentioned this idea that Carl Jung had put out, and I think this is how you pronounce it. It's like daemon, and it's the idea that each of us has a genius inside of us, and the job of the parents and the family and the community is to how do you cultivate that genius. And then you think about the word education, which at its root means to draw out, right? So the whole idea here is, how do we draw out the genius in our kids? And the current system is not set up to do that. I think what Goldie's doing and all these other social and emotional learning programs, it's like you're beginning to cultivate that genius and help them deal with the emotional stuff that can keep that suppressed, and you start bringing that out. So here we are at this big conference. You want to talk about lighting up the economy? You have a bunch of kids coming out of your schools that are creative, engaging, work in teams, focused. They got the got the prefrontal cortex all tuned up. This to me is directly linked to what we want our economy to be like. And you read these reports from McKinsey and all these other things about, there's going to be 100,000 new micro industries over the course of the next couple of decades. It's like, we better start teaching these kids who are going to get a little piece of the shoe market with 3D printers, like, you better start bringing out that creativity and that genius, and we will fix a lot of our problems. And you can't really have this conversation on education without also talking about, no, it's not the panel, but talking about food. Like, what are we giving these kids in school? What are we feeding them? Chocolate milk and a Rice Krispie treat ain't getting it done, because then they're got diabetes and all these other issues. But that's a lack of mindfulness on our part to say, this is a great idea. Let's pump our kids full of sugar, standardize them. Forget about the arts and music and all these things that would draw that genius out and may be a pathway to you being all excited about math, for example, because music is math. So part of mindfulness is like seeing these systems as broken, and how do we rebuild these systems in slow little methodical ways. And I think it starts with things that Goldie's doing, and how do we get athletes to and I've had this conversation, but maybe we should talk about it. Like, how do you get these athletes who are using Headspace and they play for some NBA team? We should figure out how to get those people to go into the schools in that community.
Role models.
Like, you want to get a bunch of inner city kids wanting to meditate? Send Kobe Bryant into their school, you know, or LeBron James into their school.
Yeah.
Cavs just won Game 7 the other day, but that's another issue. But that's how you. I mean, that's why we got to start thinking about. Come on, like we're in a brutally competitive world here. We know this isn't working, and we've got the ideas. They're all out there. We don't have to come up with anything new. It's just how do we piece this thing together?
Yeah, and I think Albert Einstein said it best, where he said that everyone's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will spend its whole life believing that it's stupid.
Wow.
And
I love that.
it's
I've
so
never
true.
heard that.
Stealing that.
yeah, it was Einstein. Pretty hard to
I'm going to
steal
say that
from
I
the
was reading
master.
about Einstein the other day.
but yeah, it's true. You know, we're judging fish by their ability to climb a tree. We're judging lions by how well they can add up, and we're judging creatives by how well they can put things into line. So absolutely, and I think all of these themes that we're discussing today, which you've also beautifully articulated, start with each and every one of us. And I'm glad that we also brought about the effect and impact that personal mindfulness has on our surroundings. But how many of you, throughout the day and your weeks and years, how many of you have ever set a New Year's resolutions to do more mindfulness? Anyone ever done that? Yeah. Anyone struggle to find time to practice mindfulness in the day? Right, a lot of people. So Baron's actually going to show us some, what I think he likes to call chair yoga. So that we can actually do this, whether you're at work, whether you're on a plane, whether you're on a train, whether you're at a seminar like this and you're in sessions all day long. Over to Baron to take us through a practical exercise.
Okay, so sit up at the edge of your chair, will you? Sit up at the edge of your chair. Now, what makes, in yoga, we call it asana. The word asana is the pose. What makes it yoga, what makes a movement yoga is that it's done with breath and attention. So we set our attention, the word's drishti, attention. So you'll set your eyes to a point in front of you. It's a kind of mindfulness. See one point in front of you and see what you see, like really see what you see. And then bring your hands to your chest center in what we call namaste. And then take a deep breath in, and then hold the inhalation. And exhale, take a deep breath out, all the air out, and hold the out breath. And inhale, full breath in. Now lace your fingers, press your palms up. Take a breath in. If you don't still have that breath, take a new breath in. And then again, set your eyes to one point. Hold the in-breath. And exhale, all the air out. Rinse your lungs. Empty, empty. Hold the out-breath. And inhale. And now exhale, bring your right arm underneath your left arm. This is going to challenge some of you. So we call these eagle arms. So you'll take your right arm under the left arm, lift your elbows a bit if you can, pull your shoulders to your back. Now take a deep breath in, relax your eyes to one point, and hold the in-breath. And exhale, all the air out. Hold the out-breath. Inhale, bring your arms up over your head. And exhale, bring your left arm underneath your right arm. Again, lift your elbows. Set your eyes to a point. Relax your eyes. Take a full breath in. Hold the inhalation. Relax your body around the breath. And take a deep breath out. All the air out. Hold the exhalation. And inhale, bring your arms up over your head. Bring your palms together above your head. Bend your elbows a bit. Now turn your fingers down and bring your hands behind your head. You could open your elbows a bit. Now relax your eyes to one point in front of you. Press your head into your hands a bit. Then take your eyes up. So you're taking your drishti up, your attention up. Take a full breath in here. Hold the in-breath and go back a little bit if that's available for you. Go back, and then take a deep breath out here. Hold the out-breath. Full breath in. Hold the in-breath. And exhale. Look forward, bring your hands to your lap, and then you'll turn to your right side for a twist. Bring your hands up on the chair, the back of the chair, whatever works for you. Look over the right side. Take a deep breath in. And exhale to the other side. Deep breath in. And exhale, look forward. That's it. Feel it different? A little, like in a moment, like these practices, yoga, meditation, it's just good to know in a moment we can really alter our reality, alter our view, our outlook, our chemistry, physiology, in a moment. Yeah.
Amazing. If anyone's watching from outside, they'd be wondering why the Milken conference is doing gang signs. But, but no, it made a lot of sense.
Now you know where the gangs got it. Yeah.
Thank you, Baron.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I feel better already. Definitely on a plane, that could help a lot. Just sitting positions, etc. But yeah, thank you again. Thank you so much. I want to open up if there are any questions from the audience for any of our panelists. Try and direct them to specific members. You can leave it open, but we've had a hand shoot up straight there at the back, so I'd love to get a microphone. There we go. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Kelly McCoy, and first off, I want to thank Andy. You've gotten me to sleep. You got my daughter to sleep almost every night, especially during that critical point where she just did not want to do it. So thank you very much, and I do start my day every day with you. So being able to see you and hear you firsthand is kind of surreal.
Nice.
I wanted to ask the panel in terms of trauma, and I'm not just talking military trauma, just life trauma. That is something that mindfulness and meditation cannot be just a one-off. That to really overcome it, you have to embrace it. And to the Congressman's point of bringing Kobe Bryant in or a star to show that this is important, is it enough to make them see the value in committing to more of a lifelong challenge of mindfulness? So I'm just interested from the panel, your thoughts on trauma and being able to get mindfulness as a lifelong value to those people who really need it. Thank you.
Who would like to take it?
Trauma?
I would just say that the biggest barrier is really letting people know that these kind of practices are out there. I mean, you're not going to get this from a lot of the doctors. I mean, the first thing you would do is, you go see a psychologist or, and so providing this as an opportunity, which we're trying to do now with the VA in their patient-centered care. Tracy Gaudette's there, and she was at Duke Integrative Medicine, and she in the last 5 or 6 years is transforming the VA's approach to the vet coming in, making sure that they have these opportunities, from acupuncture to meditation to yoga and Tai Chi. And if you go to the DC VA, for example, you can't get into a yoga class there. And that happens, but it's not available everywhere. So if you're in the right spot with your trauma, you're good, or at least you have an opportunity, a pathway home, which is kind of our collective idea is how do we get this offered everywhere? And I think that, to me, is really the first barrier.
I think there's also something interesting just in how we think about as we think about mindfulness as an intervention. I think the temptation is to always think about it as something has happened. Okay, how can we use it at this stage? And of course, there are many instances where that is appropriate, especially when trauma's happened. But I'd love to think as a society we kind of turn that model on its head a little bit, and as a lot of panelists have spoken about today, how can we introduce these skills and techniques at such an early age that when trauma does happen in life, and it will happen in life, it does happen in life to all of us, how can we better cope when those times kind of happen? So, we often think about kind of, meditation as either a sort of a vitamin approach or an aspirin approach, and I think mostly we tend to use it as a society as an aspirin approach. We wait till we get stressed or until something very difficult happens, and then we use it, and we use it until we then feel better, and then we kind of let go of it again. It's, I don't need it anymore, and then we get stressed again. So we tend to stay in this kind of cycle. Instead, if we can think about it more as a journey for life, how can I find a place of awareness, compassion, however you like to think about it, in my life that I come back to each day, so that I can embody that in my life for the rest of my life? Then I think kind of incidences of trauma and how we deal with them tend to look a little bit different.
Andy, I was just going to share this with you because we have, I don't know, working on 100 schools actually in the UK and in London.
Right.
So, and one of our children who was in 4th grade, he said, I think I shall use this for the rest of my life.
Amazing.
Just buttoning what you're saying, because it's really true. It's like, give those early skills. It's riding a bike, they'll never forget.
Yeah.
I love it.
We've got time for one more question, if there's a quick question. We've got this one here.
So I'll just have a comment and a question. So when you mentioned doctors not prescribing it, I had a different experience. I went to see a sleep doctor at Northwestern in Chicago because I was having some intermittent sleep issues, and the first thing she said was, practice meditation and, get some books on that, and gave some guidelines on that. So that was terrific to see when an MD prescribes that instead of a pill. So that was very helpful. I had a question on transcendental meditation. You mentioned that in your initial comments. How's that different from other forms of meditation or yoga?
TM? Is that to me? Yeah. Okay. I've done various different kinds of meditation. How is it different? I think ultimately there are so many different ways to meditate in the sense that how you use a mantra, for instance. I've worked with, Buddhism. I've studied that and I have a mantra from there. I use that as well. And oftentimes I have different experiences. The one thing, for instance, that I learned, at least in my meditation, my Buddhist meditation, is I learned to really focus, and I think I lost my everything. It's in my earring. Where is it?
No, it's fine. It's just gone behind. Do you mind if I?
Where is it? No, you can get it. Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you. Is that I learned, I'm going to hold it.
Hold it, yeah.
Because my ears are weird. They don't hold, oh, that's fine. Is that meditation actually helped me, it's kind of weird, helped me to focus better. So that's looking at a mandala in your mind and focusing in on these things. And I think that ultimately was different. I like TM because it's quite simple. I have a very simple mantra. And I'm able to reach a place where that wonderful spot between thoughts, where there's nothing but just peace. And that is why I like that particular meditation. But also sharpening your mind and understanding there are other ways to do a meditation where you take if you look at Tara or whatever, and you push the Tara far away and bring it to your face, and you see every single piece in your mind of what that looks like. Or a mandala, for instance. That sharpens your brain in a different way. So I think there's single point of meditation. There's also different meditations for sharpening your mind and creating stronger ability to focus. So any other ideas, Andy? I mean, obviously you probably have better.
I was intro to meditation through TM and did that through my kind of teenage years, and then as a Buddhist monk introduced to a lot of other ideas. I think the most important thing is that find something that works for you, and don't let anybody else tell you what meditation is. I really believe that meditation is defined by your own intention. Okay, so for one person, it won't have anything to do with spirituality or anything like that. It'll just be getting to sleep at night, and that's fine. For another person, for a professional athlete, it might be about kind of going out there and performing better. And then for others, it might be about finding that place of kindness, empathy, compassion, awareness, however you choose to kind of talk about it within yourself. But be willing to explore. Try different kind of techniques, and all of us have found techniques that have worked for us, but be willing to go out there and to try it. And all I would say is look, wherever you look for authenticity. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'd just
Last
add
point from Tim,
quickly, there are a lot of religious meditations too, every religion. So a lot of people think they have to give up their beliefs to do mindfulness or to do TM. You don't have to, but there are religious meditations. One of the ones I first learned was centering prayer, and there's within the Catholic Church, there's this whole body of meditations that the monks do. And if I could just end with this, I tell our kids all the time, the most important this is more global, but I don't want to leave Milken without saying this. The most important conversation you will have is the conversation you have with yourself. What are you telling yourself every single moment of every single day? And that will determine where your life ends up. And I just say that because I want everybody to reflect on what's the conversation we're having about our country right now. And are we having a conversation about what's best and what we can be, or are we having a conversation that's just mired in something else that we all feel? So it applies to not just your own life and your family's life, but the broader global ideas of what are we saying that we want. And if we can have an intervention with the negativity about our view of what's happening now, that will be the first step into changing in the direction that we maybe want to go in.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to each and every one of our panelists. Baron, Goldie, Andy, Tim.
Thank you.
And we hope that you take this mindful energy out into the rest of the conference. Thank you so much.